Hi, hello, and welcome to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. And you're listening to a new fantastic series that we are launching is the current affairs special as the editorial analysis for 2024 examination. So all the people who are actually watching, who are actually preparing this for the 2024 examination, this is a very good thing because majority of the aspirants in India, they know that the editorial is important, but they do not read this because they find it very difficult to follow editorial. So this is the class one, and let's decode some of the important editorials from this or today onwards. We'll have a series for 2024 examination. And for all the people who have not downloaded LearnStroke IAS app, please do download the app and watch the free videos. And for all the aspirants across India for 2024, we do have a Cloud9 online batch. A lot of people have shown interest to this because you can learn anywhere from India. It's a prelims come mains batch until 15 months support until your mains gets over, and after that the interview mentorship is free. So you can watch all the content online and have mentoring also. So why editorials are very important for the UPSC? I would say why editorials are important is because you can actually see most of the aspirants in India, they skip this editorial because they find it very difficult to read. And you should also know that it's very important for prelims, for the mains, as well as for the interview. And it gives a lot of ideas. Ideas is the word. It helps to bring you the perspectives that is very important. And food for thought. What do you mean by the food for thought? For all the GS papers, including the essay, you can actually write a lot of food for thought. That means you can actually write a lot of points inside this, which is a very good thing. And overall, it is very, very good for the current affairs also. So let's get to the first editorial and have an idea. So this editorial is nothing but chip tactics. I like the title. It is nothing but this is very important for GS paper 3. It is very important for GS paper 3, science and technology, because it talks about nothing but the concept of semiconductors in India. The semiconductor in India. So, what is the main issue that is being talked here? We need to have an idea relating to all of that. And let's quickly move on. This is a very important editorial. We will apply an IAS filter. You can just see the picture. We apply the filter and get the most important content from the editorial and nothing else. We only discuss the important contents. So, likewise, the most important contents, let's discuss. Recently, semiconductor. You should know that semiconductor is actually in the news, and you should know from a very basic perspective what are semiconductors. Even if you read the basic NCRT, you will get an idea. Even if you read the basic NCRT, you should be very clear about what are semiconductors, what are the uses of it. And you also know that everybody is talking about China. China and semiconductors is very, very popular. The government has taken important lessons from last year's program on semiconductor markets. So, before you understand the point, low corporate tax rates and soaps for all new manufacturing projects. And this is basically because India is trying to attract a lot of international companies to actually come and open in India to promote the semiconductor industry in India. So that is the reason why India has actually said that we will only put a low corporate tax, and we'll give a lot of soaps, in the sense we'll give all many benefits to the companies, and even 50% financial assistance, everything. We will create a system where you can actually mark, and we will create a system where everybody can. This is a system where all the companies can actually come here. So we are giving a lot of packages like $2.75 billion assembly, testing, and marking and packaging facility in Gujarat was actually proposed by the US based company. And why are they doing it? So basically, this is India, and India is actually giving a lot of incentives for the international companies to come to India to promote the semiconductor business. And the most important point that you should remember is the point of de-risk. What is this concept of de-risking? China is very popular for the semiconductors, and the whole countries around the world want to de-risk from China. That means we need to find out more opportunities other than China. So this is very, very important regarding the aspects of the semiconductor. And the next important point is that an important concept, very, very important. What do you mean by French shoring? You must have heard about offshoring, etc. So what is this concept of you must have heard about offshoring? What do you mean by French shoring? It's nothing but a strategy where a country sources the raw materials, the components, and even manufactured good from countries that share its values. So imagine that there is a country called A and there is another country called B. So you friend shore it, you offshore it, outsource it, like you get everything from B. That means you get the raw materials, you get the components, manufactured good from B, and A is actually benefiting from B. So A and B have the same values. Very, very important. So a lot of countries do this. And number one major thing that you should remember is the domination of China and even America, India, every country around the world wants to take the dominance away from China and semiconductor industry. So you should know that $52 billion was actually supported by US for semiconductor makers. Very important. When US gave $52, Indian government announced almost $10 billion. So when US is actually at 52, 10 billion for, and this also brings us, what do you mean by PLI? The production linked incentive scheme. What do you mean by PLI? You should actually have a good idea on that. And the dependence on the countries considered a threat to the stability of the supply chain is slowly reduced. So this statement is very, very important. The dependence on the countries considered threat to the stability of the supply chain. So a lot of people consider China as this threat and wants to overcome this. So this is regarding the semiconductor industry and why India wants to open up the economy, open up the country to the semiconductor makers. So I'm also giving you very important questions from this area. You can actually write it. India's growth in the semiconductor industry is directly linked to the trade linkages with the world markets through its bilateral or multilateral compacts and its approach to tariffs on various components. Analyze. So India's growth in semiconductor industry is directly linked to many aspects. What? Trade linkages, world market through bilateral, multilateral compacts, and approach to tariffs or rates. So this is a good question that you can attempt for the mains. And friend shoring may push the world towards a more isolated place for trade and reverse the gains of globalization. So this is also important regarding the concept of deglobalization. So there is a concept called as deglobalization. So very important to know this. So know these two questions. Friend shoring may push the world. Two questions. And apart from this, a master checklist for you, all of you, because I strongly believe the master checklist is very, very important. And you should basically know this is something that you have to find it out yourself. You know, this is how your preparation in next before 2024, you should be able to find out all the answers. What are semiconductors? What are the benefits of that? And Indians, what is the ISM or the India Semiconductor Mission? And you should know what you India and semiconductors and China and the semiconductor. What are the global issues? So definitely you should have an idea why China and all the other superconductors. It's also something that we need to be very aware of. So these are the important concepts of semiconductor industry in India. I think we'll move on to the next important editorial, and that is this is very much the moment you see Article 370. This is a classic example of GS paper 2. You can actually mark it as a GS paper 2. This is polity and governance. Very, very important. This is a perfect example of polity and governance. And you can expect a lot of prelims and mains questions here. So let's in Article 370, the hearing original text and spirit count. So let's check out the editorial. Let's apply the IAS filter and let's take the best important points for the exam. Ready? Here we go. Okay. So very quickly, you should know that Article 370 is very important. And Article 370, when you hear the word Article 370, the first thing that comes into your mind is Jammu and Kashmir. And you should know, we know that according to Article 370, a separate provision, separate constitution, separate provisions was granted for Jammu and Kashmir. And you must have already heard that any law, everything that the parliament creates, any law, anything that comes in is applicable to all of India except Jammu and Kashmir. So many of the things are not directly applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. So after 2019, a presidential order came in and the status was taken away. And now the Supreme Court is actually hearing, the Supreme Court of India is actually hearing this main discussion and whether the changes made to Article 370 through measures that commence with presidential order issued nearly 4 years ago. So there was a presidential order that, and now you know that Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh all have become separate entities. So 370 was seriously discussed. And in other words, we need to understand whether article the decisions made on article 370 of the Indian constitution is ultra wise. So what do you mean by ultra wise? Means beyond one's legal power or authority. So there was a presidential order passed, and all you have to check is whether uh, is there is the decision taken on 370 beyond the authority of the government, the presidential order, etc. So this is being discussed in the Supreme Court, and in this context we need to understand few things regarding what was 370, and what are some of the other aspects. Let's quickly find out all these aspects. And here we go, Article 370. So before some history to add this, you should know in modern India also, Indian Independence Act 1947 was very important, and that established independent dominion of India, and that allowed Government of India Act 1935 to serve as an interim constitution until the country adopted its constitution. So you know that before the constitution, according to the Indian Independence Act 1947, the 1935 Act, this is a very important question for modern India also. Even in polity or in modern India, you get a lot of questions regarding this. Which of the following are important provisions of the Government of India Act 1935? So you should know that the statute permitted the princely states to accede to India, join India, or whether to join Pakistan. Majority of them joined with India. When they joined with India, they executed something called instrument of accession. You know that there are many princely states at the time of independence, and they could have joined with India or Pakistan, but majority of them who joined with India, they executed something called, they signed the instrument of accession. And in case of J&K, Jammu and Kashmir, the instrument came with qualification that were ultimately written into 370. When every other states actually joined, signed the instrument of accession, something special was created that is called Article 370, and that was something that we have to discuss here also. And let's check it. According to the Article 370, how was Kashmir controlled? This is actually who was supposed to control Kashmir. If you want to bring a change in Delhi, or if you want to bring a change in Haryana, if you want to bring a change in Goa, Maharashtra, any state, you know that what are the important rules and regulations that Parliament has the power to create a lot of laws and regulations. But in the case of Kashmir, number one, the Parliament could only legislate in J&K over matters regarding what? External affairs, defense, and communication. So it is very limited. The power of Parliament, according to 370, was very limited. Anything beyond external affairs, defense, and communication was taken after consulting the state government. So second statement is state government. The state governments were consulted after that, and Parliament, state government, and anything beyond that was actually taken by the ratification of something called as the state's constituent assembly. Very very important. The state had something called as a constituent assembly. But after 1957, when J&K's, Jammu Kashmir's constitution came into force, the constituent assembly of the state, you should know that the constituent assembly of the state was disbanded, was removed, and replaced by the normal legislative assembly. So that created a big time issue, because major so 370's biggest one of the biggest blow was this, because constituent assembly of the state had a lot of powers. When that itself was disbanded, that was removed and replaced by legislative assembly, that took away a lot of powers. And you should know that the chief drafter of all this was Mr. Gopal Swami Iyengar, who created all this drafting of this 370. So that is also, sometimes even in prelims exam we get it. The main drafter of the 370 was Gopal Swami Iyengar. So that is something that we have to note here. So remember the three important points: the parliament, the state, and the state constituent assembly, and how it was actually disbanded and replaced by legislative assembly. Please remember that important, very very important concept. And you can actually have a clear cut idea that with the constituent assembly disbanded, the clause had for all practical purpose became nugatory. Nugatory means no value. It has created no value. So constituent assembly replaced. Union government used Article 367. So what is this 367? Very important. It can be even asked in the prelims examination. What do you mean by Article 367? So what do you mean by Article 367? 367 is an interpretative article, which means that it provides guidance on the interpretation of other articles in the constitution. So you can actually say, remember that it was actually part 19. It was not written actually, I'm just writing it again. So part 19 of the constitution, you can see that whenever is there is a case where is a dispute between particular provision of the constitution, you use article 367 as an interpretative article, very important. So it can be a prelims question. This is an interpretative article, very very important. So please remember, article 367 is an interpretative article. And you should know that the president achieved this by adding a new clause to article 367, where it stipulated that whenever the term constituent assembly of the state is used, it would now refer to the legislative assembly of the state. So that was the important presidential order that came in. So 367 is something that you should definitely know about. Okay, and then it talks about a very very important concept of polity and the political science. It talks about asymmetric federalism, and everybody knows that federalism is an important concept. You know that the state and the union and the states, you have different sharing divisions. So what do you mean by the famous political scientist Louis Tillin has described this balance as form of asymmetric federalism? That means when some of the states enjoy greater autonomy over governance than others, a feature reflected in various constitution provisions. So please remember, asymmetric federalism means this is the center. That means we have all the states here. So there is some cases, some states enjoy larger autonomy than the others. So there is a governance difference between this. So you should know what you mean by asymmetric federalism, something very very important for polity. So I'm going to give you important questions right away. What is the concept of asymmetric federalism? Give out examples to explain the concept in detail, and what are the important aspects of, and you can use it, whether you can use it in the examples, the Kashmir issue. What is the asymmetric federalism? How can you explain this? So prepare for such questions for the mains examination. And master checklist that you have to find it out on your own. Know what is 370 of the constitution. You should know what is a presidential order, and what is an ordinance passed by the president. There is something called as an ordinance passed by the president. So in that case, what is a presidential order, and what is 367 of the constitution? And you should know the Jammu and Kashmir issue. What are the main issues, why this is happening? If you can find out all this, this is a very good idea to get a great idea. It is going to help you a lot. Okay, so quickly moving on to the next important editorial is recalibrating India's clean cooking strategy. Very, very important. Again, this is important from the perspective of GS paper 3. GS paper 3 energy. Energy and especially clean energy is very important. So the word itself completely say that you need a strong recalibration on clean cooking energy. So what are the important points that will actually come here? Number one point is the use of LPG. You know that the government is spending a lot of money, especially the subsidy. You must have heard about the concept called subsidy. The government spends a lot of money to give subsidy on LPG, so that large number of people in where, even in the rural and in the urban areas, they actually get what? They actually get the LPG so that they can depend on the cooking. And previously we have learned that uh, initially a lot of polluting things like for timber, wood, etc., was burned to cook the food, and from that onwards we went on to a much more better thing called LPG. And from LPG, now we are going to the clean cooking strategy, which mean e-cooking, or what is the concept of electronic cooking, and why it is a good strategy, because we will take an idea about this. So they're very important for GS paper 3. Let's quickly apply the IAS filter and get the important points of the editorial. So the article talks about the LPG replacement. Is it possible? Definitely, it should be possible, because one important yojana, Gramin Vitark Yojana, that was launched in 2009, has helped grow the rural distributor of base from 18 to 60% of the total LPG distributor. So after wood and the basic wood system, it actually graduated into the LPG. And the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, the PMUI, has provided more than 9.5 crore households with LPG connections since 2016. But the problem here is a lot of transportation, budgetary issues, subsidy is a problem. And you should also know that the share of Indian households using LPG as the primary cooking fuel has risen to 71% from 33%. So just imagine in 9 years, 33% to 71% the use of LPG cylinders consumers has increased. So it's a good thing. A lot of people have getting LPG, but the new question actually comes here: should we move away from LPG? Why should we move against from LPG? Number one is the subsidy. Thousands of crores is actually being government is actually using for LPG. And other important factor is regarding the Ukraine war has created a big time issue, and the LPG import. The import of LPG is also very very important, because importing the LPG is actually a big time task for the government, because Ukraine war, the cost is actually increasing. So we need what alternative to LPGs that is less harmful to the climate, and that is an important aspect that we need to check here. So LPG replacement. So you can see that with the Ukraine war, imported LPG crisis is actually happening, and with the COVID-19 subsidy for LPG consumption was withdrawn for all consumers. And another challenge is dependence on import and LPG. You can see that just imagine around 20,000 crores rupees from 2011-12 prices was provided each year for LPG consumption over the first 2 decades of 21st century. So you can just see for 20 years the subsidy that the government has spent is around 20,000 crores. So don't you think it's a big thing? And it's high time that we move from LPG to the other clean energy system. So how is that happening actually? You can actually check it. India's clean cooking policy must actively pivot to adoption of suit for a clean technology. So what are the important things? The electric cooking, including induction cookers, induction tops, can insignificantly offset the need of flame-based cooking. So the e-cooking is the most important point that is coming here. E-cooking, and you should know that even at a tariff of rupees 8, electricity is also very costly, but just a rupees 8 rupees for each unit of electricity. Even if you use 8 unit for electricity to cook, e-cooking will be more cheaper than using LPG at today's prices. So this is the important thing. And they also want displacement of the chulas by e-cooking would also help avoid climate pollutant release. And in this context, also understand the carbon markets. The carbon markets is also very very important. You should understand, since the carbon markets is in place, e-cooking and e based less polluting cooking is going to add a lot of value. So please do remember all these concepts and LPG replacements. And immediately I'm giving you important questions from this region. In the days to come, subsidy on LPG isn't a viable move. Do you agree? What needs to be done? So you need to add your points. India's clean cooking policy must actively pivot towards the adoption of a suite of a clean cooking technology and shift from LPG's only strategy. Discuss. So, how are you going to do this? So, what is India's clean cooking policy and how do you work on this? So, what is e cooking? The issues of imported LPG master checklist. What is Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana? Know about this? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and also know something about the carbon markets. Find out about something about the carbon markets. Okay, so that was very important in this context, and I think now we'll move on to the next uh, important article regarding the debate on data. So this is very short. Let's put it as the GS paper 3 economy. GS paper 3 economy. It's from this perspective. It's a debate on data, and we have heard a lot of questions regarding data is very very important. Even I can give you an essay question. Data is the new oil. Was a good question. Data is the new oil. So you should know data is very very important, and it brings about what it brings about. The editorial talks about the statistical departments and the lack of statistics, because in India the article talks that there is a lack of correct statistics. Lack of accurate statistics is important. The word is lack of accurate, credible. Let me use the word. Lack of accurate and credible statistics is actually something a big problem in India. So, without accurate, credible statistics, how can you formulate the policies? Like, how many percent of the people are actually poor? How many people are below the poverty line? how is the unemployment rate going, and what is the inflation going. So everything, inflation, unemployment, poverty, or survey, everything need data, statistics. So India is actually facing a big time issue on the lack of accurate, credible data. So how are we going to address this issue? This is regarding GS paper 3. Let's quickly find out. Let's apply the IAS filter and get the important news. So let's quickly understand that, like many other public goods, data collection is the responsibility of the government. Very important. This is a point that you should note. So, what are the important problem? This is the problem number one. Important point on the usefulness available data to measure and socio-economic progress of transforming economy looms large. So that I said social and economic progress should be measured by the government, and the government is facing a lot of problem to get accurate data. Problem number two is, there are multiple agencies providing data on the same set of indicators for the same sector but giving different numbers. See, that is a very important aspect. That, see, for poverty, imagine that there is an agency called A. The There is another agency called B. Both A and B are actually researching on the poverty aspects, but A comes up with a different data, B comes up with another data. So this is again a big time issue that we need to be checking here. So data collection, and the, take an example from this. Very important. Take an example from this. The data on this sector calculating GDP is from the Ministry of. Please remember, very very important. You should know what you mean by MCA 21 portal. You can expect this question for the prelims also. And it derives data published by the annual survey of industries. So as of now, the MCA 21 portal was plagued by a lot of glitches, and there was problem in uploading filings and accessing documents. So the non-availability of updated data hinders the assessment of economic growth and poverty reduction. So economic growth and even calculating poverty, the same thing. Different organizations are coming up with different data. That is a big time problem. So please do remember that. And even it talks about, one time, there is a famous person who said that India's statistics department and the statistics of India was the best across the world in the 70s 80s. So now it needs a complete system, needs a better overhaul. The system needs an overhaul. That means the system needs a better transformation. Even Niti Aayog's multi-dimensional poverty index, which used the data from NHSC, the NFHS of 2019 showed reduction in multi-dimensional poverty. So what is, you should also know what you mean by NFHS. So data is very important. So remember the word accurate, credible data is the need of the hour, without which you cannot measure a lot of things in the economy. I think I'll give you the questions right away. Economic and social data ideally is a public good for larger welfare. You can use it as an essay question. For you can write it for 125 marks and 10 pages, 10 to 12 pages. You can write this question. And why is the non-availability of credible, coherent statistical data on the economy and society a colossal issue? Why is it a colossal issue? Discuss. So you can write all these points, and also know about. Also, you should be knowing about what is the MCA 21, and what is NFHS or National Family Health Survey, what is multi-dimensional poverty, what is annual survey of industries, and what is the report of Rangarajan Commission. So master checklist, do it yourself. Please do it yourself. Find out the answers. This is how you should your preparation should actually go. So moving on to the next important and the last editorial of this class one, as women do 7 hours of housework, men under 3 hours. So this actually talks about the this is actually very important for GS paper 1, the role of women, and even GS paper 1, Indian society. So especially role of women in India, role of women is very important. So this basically brings out GS paper 1, women, as why women's work. The article completely talks about the women's work and how the women's work is often unpaid. Nobody pays. Is the housewife's income calculated or paid? You see that a lot of women, even in the household, they work a lot. They actually make food, they take care of the family, and they do everything. But are they paid? Majority of them are unpaid. So this is actually a perspective from that line. Let's quickly check it out. Apply the IAS filter, and yes, the Tamil Nadu. This is actually discussed from the perspective of Tamil Nadu. A women's basic income scheme was actually discussed, aimed to recognize women's unpaid labor, which is very good. Women's unpaid labor should be talked about and discussed. The scheme will provide 1,000 per month to women in eligible households. So it's a very good move. uh, you actually transfer the money, so women is actually getting a recognition. Both the government and the court have not only thrown light on the unpaid care and domestic work. What does it include? Let's understand. It includes the cooking, the cleaning, washing clothes, household management, maintenance, grocery shopping, child care, caring of sick elderly members, and it goes on. It goes on. So are the women's income should be given, are they paid? And it also talks about the LFPR. That means India's, what is LFPR? Labor force participation rate, and we are talking about the female. So the India's LFPR has been declining for more than 20 years. Very, very important point. Despite the share of educated women coming, the LFPR for female in India has been declining in the last 20 years. It's a very important point to be noted. And you can even see when you compare it with the India's BRICS, India's 2022 female LFPR to that of the other BRICS countries, excluding Russia. You take exclude Russia and select South Asian countries. India's LFPR, the female LFPR, was the lowest among all these countries. So let's check out the statistics. It's the lowest. India had the second highest female population in the group, but still, a lot of issues were still discussed as a main important aspect. So, and in contrast, China has the highest female population. So that is also something that you have to note in this aspect. China has the highest female participation. Again, something that is very important to be noted at this point of time. And please do take a look at this. And I'm just giving right away to the question corner. Let's take a look at this. Indian women have disproportionately borne the responsibility of domestic care, which is unpaid. So, this is a good essay question. The Indian women have disproportionately borne the responsibility of domestic and care, which is unpaid. So, you should be ready to answer this question in around 10 to 12 pages. So, it's a very good question that you should really attempt at. And let's check the few master checklist. What is LFPR? What is enrollment rate? And know more about the BRIC countries. So, this is actually the best thing. So, please do out these activities. So, check out all this. And I think this is the end of the class one. So I hope you like the session. And if you're a beginner preparing and want to know about civil service preparation from the basic, download the app and just log on to Kickstart IAS, and you can watch 25 plus videos and start preparing without anybody's help. So do check out the courses, and do check out the Cloud9 24 online batch. And there are please check out the other integrated prelims mains test series, and also the super mentoring completely from our side. And do subscribe to the channel, and please do press the bell icon so you get all the videos. And for materials, you can check out the Telegram channel IAS Preparation by LearnStroke IAS. And in Insta, you can even check out IAS Current Affairs by LearnStroke. You get free current affair every day. And if you want to know anything else, talk to me. Just email me at arjun@learnstrokeapp.com. And for more inquiries, you can definitely call in this number. So do subscribe and press the bell icon. So we will meet for the other session for class 2. Keep preparing well.